Hello, Patriots. This is Chairman John Bennett. Cultural Marxism is a gradual process of grinding down Western democracies by subverting the pillars of their culture, the structures and institutions of family, religion, education, politics, law, the arts, and the media, as they provide the social cohesion necessary to a functioning society. If they can undermine the principles these structural institutions embody, then a capitalist society can be overthrown from within without even firing a shot. It's kind of like termites eating away at the foundation of a house. Cultural Marxists in our midst have plotted since the 1960s to radically transform every cultural institution in America, including its secondary education system. And those of you who think, well, the threat of communism ended whenever the Soviet Union collapsed, you would be shocked to know what's actually being taught decades later in many of America's schools. Kids are celebrated when they won't stand for the national anthem. They're taught if you're white, somehow you're racist. And socialism is taught as some kind of cool thing to be a part of. Not to mention the true history of our founders isn't even being touched on. Kids have no clue what America was built upon, and they have no real clue that they have certain unalienable rights from God, and that government's job isn't to give us our rights, it's to protect our God-given and constitutional rights. You see, in many of our public schools today, young, impressionable children are no longer being taught to feel good about being Americans. Their school teachers, who traditionally embody socially approved values, they're teaching them to be ashamed of being Americans. Spreading out from the schools that teach our teachers, this whole ideology is being taught in our nation's K-12 schools and is anti-American in the most profound meaning of the term. It is a movement that has and is teaching future generations that capitalism and traditional American values are intrinsically evil. Our public education system is radically transforming our society by covertly indoctrinating the young to an essentially clandestine and subversive transformation of our culture. The fact that communism, Marxism is being spread in our schools, it's not an accident, and it's definitely not a coincidence. The fact that communism has taken such a strong handhold in America today is because it is the intentional and coordinated outcome of a plan that has been part of America for over 100 years. We have seen the signs, and some have tried to warn American society for many years. And I would encourage you today to go out on the internet and look at the 45 communist goals to destroy America, which, by the way, was read into official congressional record in 1963. And it spells out their plan. Take goal number 17. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum and get control of the teachers' associations. Put the party line in textbooks. The government schools are teaching our kids communism and Marxism. And if you go after the unions and you expose the truth about what they're doing, the NEA unions will come after you to shut you down. Well, I think it's time that someone have the backbone to sound the alarm. I mean, just look at the Communist Goals number 36. It says, infiltrate and gain control of more unions. The National Education Association and the Oklahoma Education Association is doing the bidding of the communists and Marxists. And one of the goals of communism and Marxism is to tear down the foundation of the family, religion, and go after a culture. This will allow more dependence upon the government. The National Education Association and subsidiary unions, they are attacking the foundation of the family by supporting special rights for the LGBTQ community. And this is why you see schools having drag queen story hour, why we see schools support men and girls' restrooms, and why we see schools push to allow men to participate in women's sports. It just doesn't stop there, though. The National Education Association is also pushing and supporting abortions. The National Education Association, they approved a resolution signaling the teachers' union's unbridled support for abortion in 2019. The resolution said in part that the NEA will include an assertion of our defense of a person's right to control their own body, especially for women, youth, and sexually marginalized people. The NEA vigorously opposes all attacks on the right to choose and stands on the fundamental right to abortion under Roe v. Wade. You got to ask yourself, why? is the nation's largest teachers union voicing support for such a hot-button issue that has nothing to do with the profession of teaching? I don't know. Maybe the fact that communism and Marxism has infiltrated our government schools and the unions like they said they would. You see, the teacher unions, they've got a chokehold on some of our elected officials. And the National Education Association and the Oklahoma Education Association, they're not only pushing for things I've just lined out, but they also support and they're still pushing for the teaching of critical race theory, even though it's been outlawed by our state and they are openly defying the law. The propaganda of systematic racism is only dividing and polluting the minds of our children. The fact that they are espousing these ideas in and out of itself is causing racism. Of course, former Vice President Joe Biden is supporting and pushing the same exact agenda. The largest teacher union in the country, the NEA, has committed to expand teaching critical race theory in public schools all across the United States. And we see pictured here Joe Biden addressing the NEA's annual meeting in July. The NEA and Joe Biden have given us a great example of the leftist mission creep in a slate of critical race theory-based resolutions at the National Education Association, which is the country's largest teacher union, and they adopted it at its 2021 annual meeting. The NEA adopted new business item 39, which is a massive commitment to push critical race theory in public school classrooms across the entire country. And the intent of the resolution is to disseminate a study that critiques empire, white supremacy, anti-blackness, racism, capitalism. Every ism is out to get you. And the union is devoting money from teacher paychecks to make sure you and I feel threatened. Oklahomans, we need to stand up and start speaking the truth and calling these people and these organizations out for pushing communism on our children. We can no longer stand by and allow this type of abuse on our kids. If we want to make a difference in our great nations, we need to start by protecting our kids, not pandering to teachers' unions whose goal is to force their communist and Marxist ideology on our children. It's time to stand up, Oklahomans. It's time to tell them, quit breaking the law and teaching critical race theory. Quit pushing communism and Marxism propaganda on our children. Teach them true history about our founding and get back to the basics. Oklahomans, it's time to stand and fight. And let's hold teacher unions, schools, and others accountable to teach the right thing. And let's say no to Joe Biden, the Democrats, and the communists and Marxism that they are pushing upon the great state of Oklahoma. Oklahomans, I need you to help me continue to sound the alarm. The Oklahoma GOP needs your support. Come and help us fight this fight or fund the fight as we stand on the wall and we fight communism and Marxism and protect our children. God bless you and the great state of Oklahoma.